Four words. Four words that I think we need more than just about anything else. Four words that I know I've spent my entire life asking, does anybody really believe in me? My whole life I've asked that. Because so much of my life, I don't think I've really believed in myself. And I find that every relationship that I move into, I'm asking, God, is there somebody who really believes in me? And I thought back, and as I was preparing for today, I thought back in my life, and I thought about the people that have had the biggest impact. The people who have affected my life today to make me the man that I am. And when I started reflecting, I went back to when it was 1979. I was 19 years old. It's the first time that I remember somebody other than family having a visible and huge impact in my life. I'd been working at Revco, which is now CVS, for about 3 years. I started when I was 16. I'd started going to college. I was going to college and coming back to work. And there came this job opening for a front manager. And I was only 19. There had been people that had been there at this Revco for 10 to 15 years who were much more qualified than I was. And I remember thinking, there's no way that I can get this. I don't have any specific abilities. I'm going to school full time. Why would they choose me? And yet, two men, Ben Yaffe and Jim Deaton, my managers and district manager, must have seen something in a young 19-year-old kid, something that was beyond what I saw in myself. And they believed in me. And they gave me an opportunity which was, back in 1979, was just unheard of. Here I was going to college and I was making $18,000 a year. And that was a lot of money back then. But they took a risk. They saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Fast forward, it was 1983. I was then 23 years old. I just finished my first year of law school. I'd sent out resumes to everybody, every attorney in the city of Lynchburg, because I was in Birmingham, Alabama. I tried to get into a law school here in the state of Virginia, but either I wasn't smart enough, or my grades weren't good enough, or my LSAT scores weren't good enough. And try as I did not get in, so I'd spent the entire first year in Birmingham, Alabama. And out of over 200 letters I'd sent out, I received one response from one person, a solo practitioner, who called me up and said, I'd like to offer you a job for the summer. His name was Randall Trost. And he took me in and he showed me the things that I needed to do, and those things that he showed me would substantially alter my life. But even more importantly, at the end of the year, at the end of the summer, I was prepared to go back to Birmingham. I tried to transfer to one of the Virginia schools, and once again, never a response from anyone. I was in Williamsburg that day, the day before I was heading back to Birmingham. I remember getting a phone call from him. He said, Stephen, I just got off the phone with the dean at Washington Lee University. He said, they started school today. You need to leave and go there right now. And I think about this man who had only known me for 3 months, and how that he took a risk on somebody that he really didn't know, and how that changed my entire life. Fast forward to 2003. I was 42 years old. I just sold my law practice. I had moved to New York to go to the Culinary Institute. And of course, at 42, in order to get into the Culinary Institute, they require you to have 6 months of restaurant experience before they accept you. I'm an attorney. I've never worked in a restaurant in my entire life. But they accepted me for whatever reason, I do not know. But once again, at the end of that first year, I had to do an internship. That internship required me to go somewhere and work in a restaurant area for 7 months. And once again, in my life, I sent out resumes. I didn't get any responses, except from one person. His name was Adrian Mullen. He actually ran the kitchen out at the Culinary Institute in the Napa Valley. And here he was, taking a risk on an old guy, 42 years old, which is old in the restaurant industry, who had no restaurant experience, who had never met me. And he called me up and he said, I only have one question for you. He said, you've never worked for anybody your entire life. Can you do what I ask you to do? And I said, yes, chef. And he took a risk on me. Somebody that he didn't know, somebody that on paper didn't have anything to offer. And within 2 months, I was out there running the kitchen, and I was cooking for all of the chefs at the Culinary Institute out in the Napa Valley. 2006, came to Blue Ridge. Wasn't really interested in God. I just kind of came there because my wife drugged me there. And I sat back in the back, and I watched and I listened and I pushed away for the longest time. But there was this man, and every week, for whatever reason, he would walk by and he would touch me on the shoulder. And I heard him talking about all of these things about this big brother. He'd just come back from Nepal, and he was talking about the big brother and little brother and how that could possibly work in Blue Ridge. And we started meeting with him, myself, and a guy named Joe Corvo. We started meeting on Friday mornings, and I listened to him for months talk about what that would look like. Within 6 months, Joe had accepted Christ. I had gotten fully engaged in this whole thing. And I started looking around at the end of that year for the encounter group, and I saw two guys who didn't have a whole lot to offer. And I started meeting with them because I thought that if your pastor tells you to do something, you should just go out there and do it. I didn't know that you were supposed to push back and say, well, that was a good idea, let somebody else do it. And I met with these two guys, and we met every other Saturday at somebody's house. And that turned into an every Saturday thing. And one by one, more people got involved, and we moved to Carroll's. And I remember we had a table with about 6 or 8 guys, and I remember Woody talking to me on a Friday. And he said, you know, I can come with you if you like. And I thought that would be great because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just taking whatever I'd learned on Friday and then taking it to the guys on Saturday morning and asking them just one question because I didn't know any other question. Where are you with God? And we talked about that for week after week after week. And I am the man that I am today because he took a risk on somebody that he didn't really know, that had a desire but didn't really know what he was doing, and he believed in me. You see, I think that's where we are. That's where we are as men. We all came to this place somehow, but we didn't come here on our own. We were all brought here. There's been somebody in our lives, there have been usually multiple people in our lives that have brought us to the place where we are and have created us to be the men that we are right now, good or bad. Now, I could talk about many more examples of people who badly influenced my life to have me in places where I shouldn't have been. But I thought about Jesus. As I thought about my life, I thought about Jesus, and I can only imagine what he thought when he was walking around and picking his disciples. And he never picked the people that had anything to offer. Think about it. You got a bunch of fishermen. You got a tax collector. And I think he must have looked at Matthew, and Matthew stuck out in my mind. I think he must have looked at Matthew, and he must have watched him and observed him. And he saw that as a tax collector, he really did an excellent job in what he was doing. He just did it the wrong way. And I think Jesus thought, Matthew really could do something incredible for the kingdom of God. He really could do something incredible. What would it look like if he had somebody to walk with him? To show him right from wrong, to share with him the things so that he could redirect his excellence in tax collecting to an excellence in being a follower of Christ. And then I thought about me. I thought about the things that I've done and how people have believed in me. And if I really think about this, I think, you know what? Because I am who I am, have I ever invested? Have I ever turned around and been to them what those people were to me? And so I'm going to share some things right now that are really uncomfortable for me. Uncomfortable because they can, and I struggle with this because they can come off as sounding prideful, but they're not. It's the only way that I can get you to see the point that I want to take you to. It was early in my practice. We used to go out maybe once a month. I took my staff out to the Texas Steakhouse. And I always had the same waitress that waited on me. Her name was Jennifer. And what she did and what I saw in her was excellence in serving me and my staff when we were there. She was better than anybody that I'd ever seen. And I remember after a couple months of watching her do that, I remember looking at her at the end of a meal, and I said, would you be interested in working in a law office? She had no skills. She had nothing to offer. But what I saw in her was excellence. Excellence in what she did. Excellence in the possibility of who she could become if I had invested my time and trained her. And I watched her after she accepted the job. I watched her move into a position where she grew and she matured. And her life changed. And right now she's a pharmacist.